It was an attempt at producing chromatic notes, really, in the old days, in the Renaissance. Sometimes they'd have two rows of strings with the rows overlapping slightly. They'd tune, say, one to an F sharp and one to an F.
Yes.
And then somebody had the bright idea, well, why not just make both outsides diatonic, do, re, mi, like the white notes of the piano?
Yeah.
And then on the third row in between, you have the chromatic notes.
Yeah.
So you reach through from either side with either thumb or any of the fingers playing where and whenever you need a chromatic note in the piece.
The whole idea of multi-row harps probably started in Spain, and there they had a harp with two rows of strings, but the two rows crossed over and sort of interlaced like this.
What, in the middle of the harp?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And then when it came to Italy, Italian harps were much thinner, and so there wasn't room to spread out the two rows in the same way.
Yeah.
So the Italians put their two rows of strings parallel, and then they decided it worked even better if they had three rows of strings. So the triple harps appeared sort of just before the year 1600 in Italy. So we have Monteverdi composing pieces with solos for the triple harp, but they still called it arpa doppia, which sounds like it ought to be just a double harp with two rows, but it just means a harp that was much bigger than the other harps of the time.
And did the chromatic harp, this funny one, survive? I mean, we don't see any of those these days, really.
It did survive in Spain and in South America, but in Italy and in the rest of Europe they took up this parallel row version, and that's what came to England and eventually to Wales, and there it mixed with what really was Welsh, because there was a distinctive Welsh harp, and the distinctive thing about it was the shape of the instrument, with the very, very high bass end of the instrument.
In fact, Handel wrote this concerto in 1736 for a Welshman, William Powell, who was one of my predecessors as an official harpist to the Prince of Wales. There were so many renowned Welsh players in London at this time that they became synonymous with the new triple harp. The triple harp became a popular instrument in Wales. It accompanied dancing in the pubs and fairs and was played in the great houses. By the 19th century it had died out in the rest of Europe, but the Welsh had well and truly adopted it as their own.
Yeah, right. Pob tro som...
Surprisingly, for an instrument that is so difficult to play, the triple harp is still thriving and being taught in the traditional oral method. I went to pick up some tips from Llyr Rhyferch, who can trace her unbroken teacher-pupil lineage back to the 14th century.
Hwna digon hawdd.
Her greatest influence was one of her teachers, Nancy Richards, who was known as the Queen of the Welsh Harp.
But, you know, her lessons were not what you could say, you know, something very structured at all. You have to be very sharp to pick up things.
Why?
with
What would her lessons be like?
Well, you know, she'd present you with something, and then you'd have to watch and listen, and then you'd have to remember all that and work on it and practice on it until she came the next time.
So there was never any music?
No, never any music. No.
So completely by ear?
By ear. And I think, you see, that has given shape to my sort of improvisation.
And is it always based on a traditional tune or a traditional melody, or is it sometimes...
Mostly it is. I would say 90% of my arrangements, compositions are melody-based, the traditional airs.
These look a bit like skeleton harps to me.
Right.
I mean, here we have the sound box, the neck, the pillar, and then the bass. So is this the harp complete?
For what concerns the wood, yes.
Yeah.
Of course, as you can see, we don't have strings, we don't have the action, we don't have the pedals, and the varnish. But yes, so the wood had been completed, and we assemble all those elements together one first time to see that each part had been made properly. Everything is okay. After this moment, once everything had been checked, we disassemble again the harp, and we go on with the production.
Put all the bits in.
Right.
The triple harp had certainly captured the imagination of the Welsh, but in Spain the harp had taken a very different direction.
Spanish harps were usually very broad in the bass and very deep in the bass as well, but very shallow and narrow in the treble. And because of this crossed over stringing, you have to play with your right hand right at the top of the strings, your left hand in the middle. And so the construction and your hand position make the right hand sound quite fierce, almost metallic. The left hand sound is sort of much darker, more resonant. And the Spanish really liked this contrast between the two hands. And so they went one stage further, which was to grow long nails, but only on the right hand, like a guitarist does, to get that sort of bright guitar sound in the right hand, and then a more resonant fingertip sound in the left hand.
I mean, would you say that maybe
the Spanish tradition, they were actually trying to make the harps sound like guitars?
Absolutely. Everything in Spanish music is based around the guitar.
Yeah.
So the books that teach you how to play the harp assume that you already know how to play the guitar.
Really?
And
Although it's completely different, though.
Oh, yeah, but the guitar was just so standard that everybody understood it. And so they say, yep, if you play a chord in the right hand, that's like playing a down strum on the guitar.
Yeah.
And if you play a single note, that's like playing an up strum.
Yeah. And if I was to go to Spain tomorrow, would I still see this harp in action there or not?
Probably not so much in Spain, where this style of instrument and this style of playing has survived is more in South America, because
Right.
the Spanish took their Baroque harps across to South America, and each instrument sort of seeded a local tradition in harp building, and that's where we have our different South American harps from.